Hey everybody out there, my name is Tommy and this is my channel, Counting on the Big Sleep, and it is Sunday the something, December something, 1920 or something, I'm not sure, to be honest. Vlog number, I have no clue, but it is Sunday, just got back from church and doing our daily routine. We're at the woods today. I'll give you a show. Hold on. Let's see what's going on out there. It's a beautiful day at the lake. You know, I don't know if you can see them out there, but there's some people out there ice fishing. You know, they're out there somewhere. Let me see. Can I open it? Oh, yeah, right there. You see them out there? Yeah, they're out there doing their ice fishing thing. Oh, does that look? Looks good. Good. But yeah, church was nice today. It was more Christmassy stuff. You know, they sang some like Christmas songs, about Jesus and stuff like that, But the pastor said something that really kind of resonated with me. He was talking, not about the big stories that are in the Bible, but some of the little things, the little saying things that really, can resonate with you and stuff. About like Jesus. Jesus' main message, was basically, to open up your heart to people. Love your God, love your neighbor, love your enemy. Be kinder. Not so quick-tempered. To be a better human being. If someone's poor, help them. If someone needs food, help feed them. Be nicer and kinder to your neighbor. And respect their beliefs. Christ never said anything that he didn't really say anything about gay people. He didn't go into Rome. He was, and he was for Israel. He was talking, a lot about Israel. He came for the sins of Israel, and then his message expanded throughout the world. Not every church, is a church of Christ. So teach different things, but I truly believe that God reveals Himself. God reveals Himself in every religion, a little bit, just a little bit. In every religion, and every tree, and every blade of grass, and you, and everybody, God reveals Himself a little bit in everything. And that grace and salvation is eternal. There is no time limit. You can be forgiven, in this life or in the next life. There is no. The Catholics believe that, once you're in hell, that's it. You can't be redeemed. And to me, that seems like that limits God's mercy. I think God can be mercy to people. If hell was a real place, I don't believe hell is a real place. I think, heaven and hell are like inside you, and then you can make your life a living hell, or you can make your life a living heaven. And then after you die, I'm not 100% sure what happens. I don't know. I don't remember what happened, before I was alive. I might not remember what happens when after I'm dead. I don't know. I don't remember Jesus talking about Lazarus. Lazarus wasn't dead. He was asleep, but technically he was a dead person, and He brought him back to life. So Lazarus didn't really go anywhere. He stayed basically in his body. And then Jesus brought it back to life. I'm not a big believer in a lot of the miracles, but I believe, I kind of believe what He's saying there, that even though you're dead, you're not really dead, that someday you will be back, that you can come back. Maybe, maybe people interpret it a different way. Scholars, smarter people than me, interpret it probably different things and stuff. But that's the thing that I get mostly out of church. I'm not a big believer in the big supernatural stuff. I believe Jesus was the embodiment of God's love, and he was a great moral teacher. That I do believe. I believe he was a great moral teacher. Buddha, another, I think, was a great moral teacher, a wise person. I don't necessarily, I don't believe that, if you're an atheist, that you automatically are going to go to hell. I think grace and forgiveness and everything, extends beyond it. It does. And when God does reveal the truth, the whole truth, and you see it for yourself, then it's up to you to decide to say, yes, I want to continue going through this cycle, or maybe you don't. So maybe there comes. I mean, eternal life to me, it doesn't sound all that great. I would want a time where I could just be at peace, be dead, be not feeling, like before I was even born. Kind of, how maybe I was somewhere else before I was born. I don't know. I don't really remember that much. I remember a little bit about something, which I can go into a different time, but there may come a time where, hey, I don't want to keep going on and recycle and stuff. I want, peace. Not, I mean, you won't feel God's love, and you won't feel, any kind of hate or anything like that. You just will cease to exist. I think, there, may come a time where, I'm going to want that. I'm just going to want to not exist anymore, because, existence is hard. It is hard. And there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad. And I don't think Jesus is coming time anytime soon. I think, we have probably another 1,000 years. Every generation thinks of the last generation. No, I don't think that at all. I think the world, even if we went through war, there would be people that would rebuild. I think, I don't think Jesus himself is going to come back. I think the message is finally going to resonate with people about how to open your heart to your neighbor, to uplift, people, to figure out, why people are committing crimes, how to solve poverty, how to make the world a better place. I think that's going to take about another, probably close to 1,000 years. And we'll probably go through, World War III, maybe 4, and, before we finally settle everything. I mean, I don't know, but I don't think Jesus is coming back anytime soon. I don't think anyone knows that day and the hour, or, even nobody knows really what happens when you die. So, but what I get out of church a lot is, a feeling of togetherness, a feeling of people who generally kind of care, and are nice, and I'm sure there are mean people in there, but one of my favorite parts of church is when we first start going in there, and they make us all rise, and we shake hands with each other, we wish each other a good morning. It's nice. I like that. I like that feeling, hey, good morning to you too, good morning to you, and talk to some of the people a little bit, I like that. That feeling of community, of everyone meeting somewhere for a purpose, to worship, and maybe worship in their own little ways too. So, that's what I kind of get out of church a lot. It's not always the big things, it's the little things that, kind of make a difference, It's the shaking of hands. It's the little sayings, the little sayings, love your God, love your neighbor, love your enemy, open your heart. And that's what the message I get from Jesus is, just be a nicer person. Try to have some empathy for people. Try to help, lift up that person. Don't become part of the problem. Become part of the solution. That's what I get. And that's why I go. That's one of the reasons why I go. I just, I like going. I like going. I like the people. And I enjoy it. And I enjoy some of the little sayings. I like hearing some of the stories. Even if I don't even believe that those stories were real, I still like some of them have a good moral ending to them. Some of them you're like, that's kind of crazy, But I don't know. I think God reveals himself a little bit in everything. A little piece of God in everything, in you and me, and this tree, and the grass, and the sea, and the water, and the sky, and the galaxy. A little piece, And what God is, I don't know. It's, from what they describe, it's some sort of something that comes from outside of space and time. What that is, I don't know. But going to church this last time has really kind of made me feel that everything will be okay when you die. It'll be okay. You're not going to burn in any hell. You're not going to be tormented. It'll be okay. Grace and mercy are always there. The door to salvation's always there. And it's okay if you don't want to go on either. If you want that non-existence, it's okay too. That's someday I think I would want that. I wouldn't want to live forever and ever. I mean, I feel bad for God, and in a way, to exist forever and ever. That's a lot. It is a lot. For God to handle, and God handles, a lot. Whatever God is, that's. But for any kind of, if it was a being, a thinking being, that's a lot. That's a lot to exist forever and ever and eternally. But someday when the truth is all revealed, and I think science plays an important role. I think science tells us how things happen, and religion tells us who makes it happen. I mean, it's like taking a bite off the same apple at different sides of the apple. I think eventually it'll all be revealed. The truth will. And I think when you die, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. And I believe in Jesus' message to be nicer and kinder. And, more sympathetic, more understanding. Don't be part of the problem. Try to become part of the solution. And, violence isn't the answer. It's not. I know they say that in prison, violence is the answer in prison. That's really, they need to teach people in prison how to solve their problems without, violence. But, I didn't get here to be a Debbie Downer. I just went to church today. It was good. It was nice. People were, good. I'm out here closer to my son. I'm going to pick him up in a little bit, do a little shopping, hang out with him for the day and stuff. But this is vlog number who knows, vlog number who cares. My name is Tommy. This is my channel, Counting on the Big Sleep, where we're counting on the days to the end. To the end. I was thinking 25 years, but now I'm thinking, maybe only 10. Maybe I only got about 10 more years left. If I make it to 65 to 68, I'll be happy. If I make it at least that far. But only a couple more years left, and then I can retire, collect my little bit of Social Security, maybe get a part-time job, just do a little trailer somewhere, near a lake or a river. Or who knows? I miss being in an apartment, because I'm more out in the country now, and in a house with a lot of people sometimes is a lot for me to deal with. I mean, even though I feel lonelier out there and there's more people, You know, when I'm out here, I don't feel as lonely because I see people around. Oh, there's a guy walking out to out to the lake. They got some people out there that are ice fishing. Even though I'm not communicating with them, I feel less lonely because they're here and I see them. I see people, you know. But when I'm out there, I look at the cornfields and stuff, and I'm associating with more people, but I feel more lonely. It's a weird feeling, you know. It's just a weird feeling, you know. I like seeing people at a distance, you know. I do. But you know, even at church, I sit by myself in one of the pews in the back. You know, I don't sit next to a bunch of people. But when it comes to the handshake, I get up and move around and shake people's hands and wish them a good morning and everything. You know, just try. You know, I want to. You know, I want to feel like, you know, that I am part. You know, that I'm here not just for the church, but I'm here for, you know, other people too. You know, if someone needed a hand with something, I'd be glad to help them. You know. But I don't want to get too deep into any of this stuff. It's been a rough year. You know the story. 57, lost my job and went through depression and, you know, trying to rebuild things. You know, wind up in a big old giant circle where I kind of started off with the first job. You know, so I'm back working. I'm back working where, you know, I wanted it to be in the first place. Even though the job's getting a little bit on my nerves right now because people are on vacation and I'm doing their job. And I don't want to do their job. I want to do my job. You know? But one more day of doing their job, and then I'll be back to doing my regular work. And hopefully get some money saved and, you know, find a place of my own. And hoping, I pray to God, gee, please God, help the kid get his license. You know, I had to talk to his mom today, and, you know, she was the same way. You know, I said, you know, it was like, you know, he needs to get his permit. And, you know, she said she would. And then I told her, you know, about driving school, and then she got all, well, how's he going to get to driving school? And I explained this to her. No, these people will come to the house, they'll pick him up, they'll take him in his car, and they'll drive and give him some lessons. And, well, who's going to pay for it? Well, I said, he'll pay for it. If he doesn't pay for it, I'll pay for it. He needs his license. He's 25 years old. You know, he needs, you know, I'm afraid, see, I'm Gen X, so my mom, I grew up just with my mom, and, you know, I had brothers and sisters, but they were all much older than me, and everybody was kind of distant, so I come and went as I pleased. My mom never yelled at me, really, or never punished me for anything. You know, I mean, I was just out and about. I wasn't causing serious trouble or damages. We were just, you know, goofing around. You know, we would hang out in the driveway and shoot basketballs and drink beer and smoke some weed and lift weights. You know, I mean, we weren't out causing mayhem and trouble, you know, but yeah, we were partying. I mean, we would go to the woods and, you know, get a bonfire, and someone would bring a keg and we'd drink there and just, you know, but we weren't ever, you know, being destructive, you know. But I mean, that's probably why. And when he was born into the world, it was more computers, more video games, more staying inside, you know. So I think in ways we raised him to be useless. You know, and we look back, hindsight 2020, of course. You know, I should, you know, which we did. I should never let him drop out of school. That's for sure. And we should have never said, you know, hey, it's okay if you smoke pot. You know, shouldn't have said that. You know, I don't care if you smoke pot. I smoke some myself. You know, but I would want him to be older and a little more mature before he would do stuff like that. You know, get out. You know, finish high school, go into college. You know, or go to a trade school. And then if you want to smoke a little pot or something, well, I got nothing against it. It's legal here. You know, I would have more of a problem if he was drinking every day. That's for sure. You know, and yeah, I know some good people that drink every day. I know good people that drink every day, but I also know some people that get very violent when they drink. And I rarely met of anyone, getting violent when they get stoned or smoke some weed, But that's a whole different story. But yeah, in ways, kind of raised him to be useless. Should have pushed him more to, finish high school. We should have sent him away at camp in the summer. Get him out on his own. But he had all these real weird little quirks. Like he'd hate touching paper towels or napkins or, toilet paper. He hated the feel of the texture, I don't know. And I pray for him all the time. I hope God, keeps an eye on him. I don't want him to wind up in jail or anything like that. I want him to be a happy, individual. A lot of people saying, you got to raise him to be a man. And I'm like, no, I don't want to raise him to be a man. I want him to raise him to be a caring and loving human being, which is what I think the world needs. That's what I think the world needs. More, more people who care. Not just about, other people, but about the planet and stuff like that. But I don't want to get into all that stuff. Been going on for 21 minutes now. I want to thank you all for listening. Whoever does listen. But church was great. You should think about, getting in touch with more of a spiritual side of yourself. That doesn't hurt. You might learn something. I mean, everything. I mean, if you're a Muslim, a Jewish, or, if it makes you a better human being, then I'm all for it. Whatever makes you a better human being, I am all for. All right, everybody. I will see you on the next one. Later. Bye.